What's up, guys? Let's talk about the 6 basic trigonometric functions. So we're dealing with trigonometry, but before we jump into doing any problems, it's probably a good idea to really get straight all 6 trigonometric functions. So to start off, what we're dealing with is we're dealing with right triangles, which means we have a triangle that has a right angle in it. And trigonometry is all going to focus around one of these other 2 angles. So I'm just going to use this one down here. If we use this one up here, it changes things. Things are going to flip-flop. So the angle we're going to reference is this one down here. And how we're going to represent that is we're going to use this Greek symbol theta to say, hey, we are talking about this angle right here, this bottom right one. So everything we do with trigonometry and dealing with this angle all has to do with pieces and their locations relative to this angle. So in this triangle, one common piece is the hypotenuse, and that is always going to be the side that is across from my 90-degree angle. It's also the longest of the 3 sides of this triangle. So the hypotenuse is here. The other 2 pieces that we have to label is the opposite side and the adjacent side. So we have this side down here that we have to label and this side across over here. So if I go all the way across this triangle and across from this angle, this would be the opposite side. So this is the opposite side of this angle, this reference angle. This side that's right next to it, another name for next, would be adjacent. So I have an opposite, I have an adjacent, and I have a hypotenuse. Now, what I mentioned was that it's all relative to where theta is. If I would have moved theta up here and wrote it here, then the opposite side would now be down here, and the adjacent is this one right next to it. So it's all, the opposite and adjacent labels are all in reference to where is theta located. The hypotenuse is always going to stay at the hypotenuse. So the 6 trig functions that we're going to talk about, and you might have heard of 3 of these. We're going to talk about sine, cosine, and tangent. And those are 3 pretty common ones. And there's 3 more that people don't often know as much about, which is cosecant, abbreviated with CSC. We're going to have secant, SEC, and cotangent. Now, these 3 are often ones that, especially your geometry students don't know much about, but these are connected to our original 3 trigonometry functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. There's a connection here, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. So we need to define what is the sine of theta, the cosine, and the tangent. And the common saying that we use to remember is so, ka, toa, SOH, CAH, and TOA. Here's how it's going to work. If you want to know the sine of this angle, what we're going to have is S stands for sine. The O and the H stands for opposite and hypotenuse. So the sine of theta is going to be the opposite, OPP, divided by the hypotenuse. HYP is how I'm going to abbreviate that. So sine, opposite, divided by hypotenuse, SOH. Cosine is going to be CAH, so ka, and that's going to use adjacent, hence the A, and hypotenuse, which is going to be the adjacent divided by the hypotenuse, hence the A and the H. And then finally we have tangent, which is TOA. Tangent, the O is the opposite side, and the A is the adjacent side, opposite divided by adjacent. So we have sine, cosine, and tangent. Now I had told you that there's a connection between sine and cosecant, cosine and secant, tangent and cotangent. Here is the connection, is these are actually reciprocals of each other. So if you actually want to know the cosecant of theta, you're going to take 1 divided by the sine of theta. Now, that isn't as often remembered. The reciprocal way you can think about that is, since these are connected, flip this fraction. So instead, it's going to be hypotenuse on top, and the opposite is on the bottom, or the denominator. Same for cosine here. So cosine and secant, the secant is really just 1 divided by the cosine. So what that means is, since I'm taking the reciprocal there, is I'm going to flip it. So we're going to have, if this was adjacent divided by hypotenuse, it's going to be hypotenuse divided by adjacent. And then finally we wrap it up with tangent and cotangent, and you can see this theme of taking a reciprocal or flipping it. We're going to end up with adjacent over the opposite. And those are the 6 trig functions. You're going to want to keep those handy, and here in a few future videos, we're going to do some operations with those 6 basic trigonometric functions.